Next, we're going to add a score to our game so that we can count how many bricks we pop. So what we're going to do is add a variable called score. By the way, I'm on breakout7.js now. So we're going to add a variable called score, set that equal to 0 initially. And then down here where we detect our collision, every time the ball bounces off a brick, we're going to increment the score. Instead, we could just increment it by 1 for each brick you pop, but I decided instead I'll give you more points for the bricks in the back. So as the columns move to the right, you get additional points. So I increment the score by a C plus 1. And remember, the C is for the columns as we iterate through the bricks, each frame. So, and then we check if the score is 50, hey, you win. Because the total value of all the bricks on the screen right now is 50. And once you get to 50, the game will stop, and you'll get the alert that you won. So, now that we have a counter for the score, we have a variable, and we're checking each time a brick is broken, and you get points for it. Next thing we need to do is show the score. So we need a draw score function, and that's for just 3 lines of code. We're going to call this each frame. ctx.font, we set the font. ctx.fillStyle, we set the color of the font. And then the text that we want in it. So score, and then this is our score variable right here. And then this is a position of our text. It's going to start at the 20 pixels down and 20 pixels to the right. So in the upper left corner of the screen. And that's it. So that's going to draw the score, each frame, in the upper left corner of the screen, and you can change the color with this variable right here if you want. Change the font, size, whatever you want. And then we need to call the score function each time. So in our draw function, you know how we're doing, we clear the rectangle, we draw the ball, we draw the paddle, draw the bricks, we check for collisions, and then we're going to draw the score. So that's our draw function. It's going to execute once each frame, and it's going to draw the score on the screen. So that's it for the score. That's pretty easy. I'm going to select all this. We'll go back to JSFiddle and test it. JSFiddle.net and click run here. So, oh yeah, we've got to get moving. There we go. So yeah, so that's working. We're getting a score now. Each time the ball bounces off of bricks, we get points for it. And you can see the score up here. It's in blue. You can put it in a different color you want. Like I said, font size, position, wherever you want to put it. So the score is working. Not a lot of work to add the score. That's pretty easy. Okay. So that is that. What can we do next? Gosh, there's more stuff I want to do to the game. So this is going to be kind of our last iteration, Breakout 8. I have one more, but that's really for deployment. And I'll show you how to deploy the game on a server. But Breakout 8, we're going to add mouse control so that instead of using the arrow keys, well, you could use either the arrow keys or your mouse to move the paddle. And then brick shading. So because the bricks kind of look boring if they're all blue, so we're going to have varying tones for the bricks. And then we're going to change how we're animating it. So we'll show you that. So for the mouse control, let's look at that first. We have a handler, mouse move handler, and basically we're just checking for the relative Y position of the mouse to see if it's on the canvas. And then if it is, then we'll set paddle Y to where the mouse is. So if the mouse is at the bottom, then we're going to set paddle Y variable to the bottom. And then we need to add a mouse listener down here at the very bottom of our code. At the very bottom, we're going to add a mouse listener, this last line here, to check for the mouse events. So next, brick shading. So when we draw the bricks, instead of just having a single brick color, I'm going to have an array for the brick color. So we had 4 columns of bricks. We're going to have 4 different colors in our array, and each column is going to be a different color. And then as we iterate through the columns and rows, and we can set the brick color. Let's see, where do we do that? ctx.fillStyle equals brick color of C. In other words, the column, the first time through it'll be this color, the second time through it'll be this color, third time through it'll be this color, this next time through it'll be this color. So the idea is that the color gets slightly darker as the rows of bricks move, the columns of bricks move to the right. As the columns of bricks move to the right. So you'll see how that works in a second, but there's one other thing that I want to show you. The animation, the way we had been doing it, we had been doing this interval, request interval. So interval equals set interval, draw 10. And a better way to do that, instead of drawing it every 10 milliseconds, is to use a request animation frame and let the browser decide how frequently it's able to update the display. So the browser is going to basically control the animation update now, and it'll update it as frequently as it can, depending on how busy the CPU is, stuff like that. So it's going to execute the draw function, it's going to get down to the bottom, and then it's going to request to repeat the same thing. And then the browser decides when it's available to do that. So that is our iteration number 8. We've got some nice changes here. So let's take a look at how that works. And let's push run. So now you can see the brick shading is getting a little bit darker to the right. And look, hey, the mouse is, I'm not doing anything with the arrow keys. Now the mouse is doing this. And if you take the mouse off of the canvas, then you can't move the paddle with the mouse. The mouse can only move the paddle when the mouse is on the canvas. But the arrow keys still work. You have to click inside the canvas to activate the arrow keys. But yeah, the arrow keys still work. You can see our score working. You can see the multiple layers of bricks in different colors. You can use mouse or arrow keys, either one. Okay, we got a lot of nice features here. So the last thing we're going to do is figure out how to deploy this, because if you want to share this with your friends, you're definitely not going to do it on JS Fiddle. You know, that doesn't make sense. It's like, well, hey, I wrote this cool game, but here's the thing. You got to load and put all the code into JS Fiddle. You got to put this HTML line in. And it's like, no. Your friends are not going to want to do that. They're going to want to say, okay, well, show me the website or show me your mobile app. At least here's one way to deploy it. You can deploy it on a website, as I've done, and you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to pay any money for it, because you can set up a GitHub account for free, and you can host your game on GitHub as a server page. And I'll show you how to do that. It only takes a few minutes. So we have a few final changes in iteration number 9 here of our breakout code. I made a bigger field, 600 by 900, so that we could put it on a bigger screen instead of in a small JS Fiddle screen. And I also added more bricks. So let's look at what we did here for the more bricks. As I add more bricks, I needed to count the bricks instead of adding a score up to determine when the game ends. So the game is now going to end when the brick count gets down to 0. And each time we crush a brick, we decrease the amount of bricks left on the screen by 1. And then we check if brick count is 0, oh, guess what? Game's over, you won. So we have up here in the variables section, we set the brick count equal to the brick row count times the brick column count. It's just a product of those two. It tells you how many bricks there are total. And like I said, we just decrement it each time we break a brick. And then that's how we know how to end the game. And you can see also we had to change some of the brick size and the brick padding and stuff. So I changed some of those values here. The offset, the padding, and the spacing, and the size of the bricks. So when you multiply all that out and try and get it so that it looks good, what you get is, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns of bricks, I think. So I had to add more colors to my brick color array. Now I have 8 colors in this array, so we can have up to 8 columns of bricks, and then each one will have a different color. And that way when we paint the color of the bricks, each column is a slightly darker shade as we move to the right, which looks pretty cool. And then how do we change the dimensions of the screen? Well, we do that in this index file, index.html. Remember, we're going to need this to deploy the code, by the way. When in JS Fiddle, we were basically just pasting in this line of HTML and this line of the style sheet into JS Fiddle into separate boxes. When we deploy the code on GitHub, I hope you already have a GitHub account, by the way. It's free. You should have a GitHub account. When we deploy the code on GitHub, we're going to have to post this as a single index.html file with this HTML line, this style line, and then something to call the script. So actually, we probably want to call Breakout 9, whatever the latest script you want to use, you have to put it in here so that it's going to call that script and execute it. So now we have the index and script 9. And So to run this script, you can see that's it's a bigger sheet, 600 width by 400 height. So it's a little bit bigger than the one we were using before for testing. And so how that looks on the big screen is like this. You can see all these rows of, a lot more rows and columns of bricks on the screen. So how do we deploy that on GitHub? Well, if you have a GitHub account already set up, I hope you do, what you're going to do is create a new repository. I've already done this, but I'll show you mine. I created one. You can call it anything you want, but I called mine website. So in the website repository, you are going to add your code. I put all these in here because I want you to have access to them. But the only one you really need to run that sucker on this web page is Breakout 9 and index.html. Those are the only two files you need to post in here at a minimum to get this working. So the Breakout 9 and then index.html. And index.html, like I said, you should be calling the breakout9.js JavaScript file. Okay? So we're going to post those in here, and then we're going to go up here and go to Settings. And it's a single click. It's so darn easy. You're going to love this. You just scroll down in the settings screen for this repository. You're inside your website repository or whatever one. There's a source. See how it says GitHub Pages here? This is called GitHub Pages. You're going to click the source button, and I already have it selected as master branch. The default is none because GitHub Pages is disabled. But what you want to do is pick master branch. And then what that does is tells GitHub that you want the master branch of this website repository to serve as your main web page. So it's going to look for an index.html file in the website repository in the main folder of that. And so that's going to serve it right here. And then you can see the URL I have is https Joey A. James, which is my GitHub account name, github.io/website, right? And that's it. It's that easy to set up a GitHub server so you can actually host this on a web page. Now you can share it with your friends. You can just send them the URL and they'll be able to play your game and try it out. So I hope you enjoyed this series on JavaScript gaming. I hope it was as much fun for you as it was for me. If so, please click the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'm Joe James. Thanks for watching.